This is the Six for Sixers podcast. Once again, I'm your host, Creek, and we are back at it again. After a couple weeks layoff on the podcast, we are now at the midway point in the season. They call it the midway. It's actually not really the midway, but All-Star break. And obviously, we've played more games behind us than we have in front of us, so it's not really the midway point in the season, but this is the time where teams really start looking at where they are and where they can be. So Six for Sixers podcast, what we do here is we break down the Sixers in 6 points or less. Could be a game, could be like now. We're looking at the mid-season review, and that's what we do. We get in and out. This is not no 2-hour, 3-hour podcast like some of them are, but real quick in and out. So let's get into it. The Sixers right now are currently 20-34 record, and definitely not where we all thought that they would be at this point in the season. With the type of offseason that we had, there was a lot of excitement in the offseason with the signing of Paul George. There was a lot of excitement around rookie Jared McCain. There was a lot of excitement around really in the return of Joel Embiid, what we thought we were going to get a healthy, improved Joel Embiid, especially because he played in the Olympics. We thought that that's what we were getting. And then we also were excited after the Olympics because we saw Yabusele play in the Olympics against Team USA and played very well. Signed Yabusele. So there was a lot of excitement going in, and that has all pretty much changed to sheer disappointment, and now has all the fans questioning a lot of those moves in the offseason. For example, the Paul George signing, which we'll get into. For example, Embiid playing in the Olympics. So all of the things that we were excited about turned into just not being excited and almost being angry about where the team is. So 20-34, we have 28 games left in the season. We are in 11th place in the Eastern Conference. To get into the play-in tournament, you need to be in at least 10th place. We are 2 games out of 10th place, and that's pretty much what we're shooting for now. I can't see us getting into the regularly scheduled playoffs. We're kind of looking into that, which would be 1 through 6, looking at, unless we go on an incredible run, we're really looking at the play-in tournament, trying to catch the Chicago Bulls, which we are very capable of catching. I think after that before them is the Miami Heat, which we could also catch them if we go on a really good run. The problems, well, we have a lot of problems. We're going to get into those right now. Six for Sixers. Point number 1, we're going to talk about Paul George, probably talk about him more than anything, because Paul George is just not playing up to expectations. Paul George is averaging 16 points a game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, which for an average NBA player, really not bad stat line. And Paul George has really been up and down the last 5 games or so. He's averaged around 10 or 11 points a game. In his last game against the Nets, he scored a lowly 2 points on only 7 shots, which is the real problem. Why is he only taking 7 shots? I don't know. Paul George has made some comments that it's very tough to play with Joel Embiid, and I've heard that from other players as well. However, against the Nets, it was a back-to-back. Joel Embiid wasn't playing. You still only scored 2 points. Paul George has had a string of injuries, starting with a hyperextended knee, which kept him out some games, and then he hyperextended the knee again, which kept him out some more games. And now he was sidelined with a pinky injury, and he is still nursing that pinky injury. Hopefully that has healed up or heals up soon, because we really do need that three. I won't even call them a big three anymore, but we really do need those three, Maxey, Embiid, and George, in the lineup so that they can get used to playing with each other. So Paul George has played 35 games this season, so he hasn't been really available for the majority of the season. He has missed 21 games. He's missed 19 games. So he hasn't been highly available this season, and he's kind of been, to me, lost in the offense a lot, and just kind of looks like he's disinterested in being out there a lot of times. Sometimes, I mean, he did have one game where he went for like 30-something. It really showed what he could do. I think that it's twofold. I think that part of it is on Paul George to just be more aggressive. He doesn't look aggressive. But I think also part of it is coaching, because Paul George is a player that has to have the ball in his hands. And with Maxey and Embiid on the floor, you become a third option. And it has looked that way when Maxey and Embiid are on the floor together. They look like a two-man wrecking ball. They just kind of pass, give and go to each other, pick and rolls to each other. And Paul George just standing in the corner, similar to what Tobias Harris was doing. We gave Tobias Harris all the business for not producing, but now here we have another player who's considered like a third option, and the same thing is happening. So it might not all be on Paul George in terms of his playing ability. I still believe he has the ability to play and produce, but he has to have the ball. He has to have plays called for him, and that just hasn't happened. So whatever it takes. I mean, we're paying a lot of money for Paul George this season, $49 million at age 34. Next season, $51.6 million. The season after that, $54 million, and then the season after that, $56.5 million. On the hook with Paul George into the 27-28 season, roughly over $200 million. So we really need Paul George to at least pull in maybe 20 points a game. The rebounding, yeah, I guess he could give us a few more rebounds, but hasn't been terrible. I think that the games where he's really low is what really accentuates what fans are saying, is that he's stealing money and all that. I don't think he's stealing money, but I do think that we need more out of him. All right, so that's the first point, is Paul George. We need more from Paul George. And the second point is Joel Embiid. How is Joel Embiid's health coming along? We really don't know. We are getting conflicting stories. Joel Embiid says his knee is he's going to need another surgery at some point. But then the Sixers came out and refuted that. So we don't know what the truth is. There's also been reports that before the Sixers signed him, that he was medically, that they had some doubts about his knee. And so we don't know. And they've re-signed him. They allowed him to play in the Olympics. And now he's been sidelined for a majority of the season. Embiid has only played in 17 games, does not play back-to-backs. And when he does play in games, he doesn't really look 100%. He moves tentatively, and he's playing more of a perimeter game in which he stays kind of out by the three-point line and facilitates from there, shooting a lot of three-pointers, and then a lot of longer mid-range shots, 18-footers, just because it doesn't appear that he can really get to the basket like he used to. In the last game against I believe that was Toronto. Embiid had the ball at the three-point line, wide open, but he had been 1 for 5 that night shooting threes. I guess he wasn't confident shooting it. I wish he would have taken it. Either you win or lose with that play, you could ride or die with it. but he didn't take it, and he tried to maneuver his way to the basket, lost the ball, and that kind of lost the game for us. So that's kind of been his season. I don't know if it's injury or just kind of out of shape, but it does look like he's not really 100%. That being said, his stats are down from previous seasons, averaging 24.9 points, 8 rebounds, 4 assists, but still pretty good. I mean, if we can get Paul George going with that, and already with Max he's bringing, which we'll get to, it's not looking bad. Embiid's salary, $59 million, $64 million next year, $69 million the last year of his contract, 28-29. So we got 4 more years really before you could really unload Embiid and kind of move on. That being said, all the guys talk positively, but you don't always see it on the floor. And that's my point number 3. Point number 3 is we see a lot of lethargic play. It's kind of on and off. Some games they're really on. When they played the Celtics on Christmas Day, they were really on, playing hard. They won that game 118-114. But then you see some lowly games like against the Washington Wizards, which are at the basement of the league, or the whole league, and we barely beat them. We've seen losses to Toronto, who has suffered major injuries and are just not in a great place. And those are the games where the Sixers look like they just don't care. You know, they don't look like they really cared whether they win or lose. And that's the tough part. So that's the up and down. Some games are great. The last game against Boston started out really well. I think first 2 or 3 quarters, Sixers were rolling and went up by over 20 points. But then they allowed the Celtics to come back and just dominate. I mean, Jason Tatum just went crazy and allowed them to come back in the game and win the game 118-110. So it's just about really consistency, doing it for 4 quarters. When they've shown they've been able to do it for 4 quarters, we've had some pretty good games, some pretty good outcomes where even if we didn't win, we really competed. Like, for example, against the Denver Nuggets, who are stacked. I mean, they have Murray and Westbrook and Joker and a host of great role players, and we took it to them right down to the end. You can live with those games, with those losses, but it's just the ones where we put forth, we don't put forth, doesn't appear that we're putting forth a lot of effort. And when I say a lot of effort, I don't mean every single person, but the biggest players overall. Which brings me to my 4th point. The players who are playing well, let's not let the cast a shadow with the injuries and the non-back-to-backs and the just not playing up the expectations that we discussed before. Justin Edwards has had a really good rookie season. He's playing really well, developing his confidence. And at times, honestly, I know you can't play Justin Grimes over, Paul George or over, some of the other veterans, but he's really looked better. He's really looked well enough. He has worked his way pretty much into the starting lineup, especially when Paul George is not in the lineup. And I like his game. He's taking a lot of minutes from Ricky Council, that's for sure, but probably well warranted, probably deserves it. Quentin Grimes was a good pickup by the trade deadline. We had to give up Caleb Martin, and I think we also throw a pick in there too. But Quentin Grimes looks like he could really play some ball. I didn't see a lot of him because I'm pretty much a primarily Sixers all day. But he's a good two-way player, plays really solid defense, hustles, and is playing unafraid. I thought it would be a transition period with him coming in, but hasn't really been. He's played really well. RC4 continues to do his thing. Kelly Oubre has had a great season. And Yabusele also, although Yabusele had a little knee injury there, was sidelined for a game or so, and he slowed down a little bit. But overall, season's been very solid. So got to give props to those guys who are continuing to play. and continuing to work hard. Another guy, point number 5, who's continued to work hard is Tyrese Maxey, 27.6 points per game. And the best part of Tyrese's stats is 6 assists per game. And Maxey is starting to, he changed his game up a lot for the better, distribute more, a lot of variety in his shots, not just settling for the 3, taking the ball to the rim. I would love to see a lot more mid-range from Maxey because I think he could eat a lot easier if he would just pull up on the mid-range sometimes. Because I think that those other teams, big men, they anticipate him coming all the way in, and he can get those circus shots off and make some there, but just keeping him kind of out of the lane, pulling up for maybe between 10 and 15 feet, I think he could really eat a lot. And he hasn't done a whole lot of that, but he's been good. And you can't fault him because a lot of times it's pretty much all on him with Embiid out, with George out. Maxey has really played his heart out. And his temperament seems to be a little up and down this season. Kind of feel bad for him because he seems to just be a little frustrated in his interviews and just not. He seems interested in winning, obviously, but he just doesn't seem happy all the time. And probably a lot of frustration and probably a lot of anticipation going into this season when you're playing with Paul George and you figure you're getting Embiid back healthy and then it just doesn't pan out. So Maxey has had a good season. I just wish he had just a little bit of help, and he hasn't gotten it this season. So we have 28 games left. It's still a lot of time left for the team to gel and to make a run, especially when you have players like George, Embiid, and Maxey. And the last point is coaching and management. Coaching is terms of Nick Nurse. Nurse is very passionate, but again, his temperament's been up and down too. And it just seems like sometimes Nurse doesn't exactly know what to do in terms of making the adjustments necessary. Point in case, the game against Boston, where we were up by like 24 points and Boston just kept surging. There was really no answer for anything Boston was doing to us on the defense. I mean, to us defensively, they had literally made a point to just shut Tyrese Maxey out of the game, just not allow him to get the ball, not allow him to get open. And that's what they did. They just took him out the game. And it was not a real answer for that from Nick Nurse. And in that same game, Boston's offense just surged on us, and there was no real plan for what we were going to do to adjust to that or stop that run. And sometimes in the NBA, it's just like that. But there have been a lot of times this season where I felt Nick Nurse got outcoached by someone else. And just the team just didn't adjust at all. They just kept going with the same things. A lot of the end of the game calls, the play calling just didn't really seem all together. And then Nurse he's doing a lot of screaming and hollering on the sidelines. And it seems passionate, but at times seems that like maybe the team is lost, or maybe he's lost them. So in terms of the management side, I don't know, because people were really high on Morey and what he did in the offseason, and now hindsight is always 20/20. I can't put Joel Embiid getting injured on Morey or not looking 100%. And you really can't put the production of Paul George on Morey, but that's what people are going to do, and that's what they're doing, saying that it was a bad signing. But then if Paul George is averaging 22, 23 points a game with a couple more rebounds, then people would say it was a great signing. And Paul George hasn't been available. So it's easy. Hindsight is very easy to look back and say, oh, he shouldn't have signed him, or he shouldn't have extended Embiid. But what are you going to do when a guy just won an MVP for you? You extend him. You just take a chance on his knee being correct. And that's really all you can do. You cannot say, hey, we're not going to bring you back, or we're going to let you go into free agency or trade you. I know the league is ruthless, but it's not that ruthless. So we got to give Morey a break on that. And also, we got to give him a break on the Paul George signing. A lot of people say, oh, I predicted this. No, you didn't. Paul George had a great season last year. He played like 75 games or 72 games, something like that. Didn't miss a lot of time. He was efficient in the Clippers offense, and he was a great two-way player. And the Sixers would not even have signed him if he wasn't showing and proving himself in previous seasons. So it's easy to get on the internet and say, oh, that was a bad sign. Told you guys, he's too old, so forth. But guys are playing into their later 30s now. And like, look at LeBron, look at James Harden, look at Steph Curry. So it is happening, and he has been one of those elite status players. So I'm not going to come down too hard on Morey on that. I think getting rid of Caleb Martin was a good move because he wasn't producing for us. And I like Quentin Grimes. So I've been a real critic of Daryl Morey just because I don't feel he really knows basketball. I feel like he's more into numbers and statistics. But I cannot come down on him for these moves, re-signing Embiid. And then I think people harp on the negative but don't think about the positive. Well, bringing in Yabusele, that's a good move. Also, re-signing Tyrese Maxey, that is also a good move. Re-signing Kelly Oubre is a good move. And I think, although it's been debated on the Facebook group, I think that you can criticize Reggie Jackson, but you're not with the team anymore. You can criticize that signing. You can criticize Kyle Lowry still being with him, but I think Eric Gordon has played really well. And people, I think, look at his age. Okay, he's not as mobile, but who is after being in the league for, over a decade? Who's going to be as mobile at 30-something that they were at 25? He is spotting out. He's shooting well lately, and you got to give him his props. So it's give and take with Daryl Morey in terms of management and their free agency and all of that. And you cannot go back. Hindsight's 20/20 for everybody. So that's where we stand, folks. Not looking good. Honestly, I do think we'll make the play-in. But with Embiid saying he needs another surgery, people are like, shut him down. I don't think shut him down. If the Sixers say he can play, let him play. Because I really don't see the benefit in shutting him down at this point and so-called getting ready for next season or getting rest. He might come out next season, and that didn't even just might be what it's going to be. No back-to-backs and damage pretty much for his career. And surgery sometimes doesn't repair that. Paul George, Maxey, I think just get these guys on the floor. Let's see if they can develop some chemistry and see if they can get it moving. And that's really all we can do. But I tell you one thing I'm not going to do. I'm not giving up on the team. And I am Sixers for life. I have been. I do not know any other team well but the Sixers. And I've been a fan since forever. So shout out to those people who are staying with it. I know the frustration. Obviously, I'm frustrated, but never give up on the team. Okay, there's a lot of season left. And who knows, if we gel and click at the right time, we can get into that play-in tournament and we can actually do some damage. And if we get into the playoffs, we'll be playing the 1 seed or the 2 seed. But I believe we can beat the 1 or 2 seed in the East. We've shown ability to beat the Celtics and We've also beaten the Cleveland Cavaliers this season. So anything can happen if we get everybody back at the right time. Everybody's healthy. Anything can happen. So let's not put the team down. Let's kind of cheer the team on, and let's go Sixers. That is the 6 for Sixers report. I'm your host, Creek. Went a little overtime, 25 minutes, but it's all worth it. Next, I'll be back with my brother Greg, maybe my brother Jerv, or maybe somebody else. Who knows? I like to share the duties around here. But this one, to get this out before today's game against Boston. Go Sixers always. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.